Hello, I am Blaze, and welcome back to Warframe. Today I'd like to look at the Zarr, a primary weapon introduced in the War Within update, featuring itself as a grenade launcher that actually makes good use of the select fire mechanic introduced with the Stradivar. The Zarr can be acquired by purchasing the blueprint in the market for 30,000 credits, and then afterwards feeding your foundry a further 30,000 credits, as well as one fully built Dragoon, 1,800 Kuva, 2,400 alloy plates, and 5,500 salvage with a mastery rank requirement of 7. Kuva is a new resource that can be acquired by completing mid-mission mini-events from Kuva siphons after completing the War Within's quest. Originally this was done by running Grineer missions on Uranus or later planets, or in Grineer sorties, though it's now going to be on planets in close proximity to the Kuva fortress on the star chart, given the Kuva fortress actually relocates itself periodically. Completing the siphon when it spawns will award you with about 600 Kuva before resource boosters or the effect of the Smitikavat's charm. 1,800 Kuva should take you 3 siphons at most. Alternatively, if you want to start swinging this cannon around immediately, you can either buy it on its own from the market for 225 platinum, or as part of the Continuity Collection bundle. In both cases, it will be pre-built with a pre-installed catalyst and it will have its own weapon slot. As I said, the Zarr makes use of the select fire mechanic the Stradivar introduced, but actually makes better use of it by instead using it to dictate your intended engagement range. The default mode of fire, Cannon, launches a cluster grenade, while its alternate Barrage Mode turns it into a shotgun to help it answer to close encounters. The Zarr is indeed basically a ship's swivel cannon your Warframe lugs around as a primary weapon, in terms of its aesthetics, sound design, and stats, which I quite like. For its listed arsenal stats, its base damage is listed as 25 impact damage, most likely the grenade projectile itself, as well as 175 blast damage for the explosion component. This is backed up by a 15% critical hit chance and a 2.5 times critical damage multiplier, which is the same as the Latron Prime. When it crits, it'll hit hard, but the 15% critical chance makes that it's somewhat unreliable without something else to help boost it up. Its status chance is also reasonably high at 20%, meaning that the Zarr will be able to lay out status effects quite well with its area of effect explosions. Somewhat less impressive is its magazine capacity at 3 rounds, with 84 rounds in reserve. The Zarr is also a muzzleloader type of affair, where your Warframe will feed in the ammunition one by one for the reload animation. The reload time for going from empty to full is 2.3 seconds, which will be shorter if you're only doing a partial reload. This does leave the Zarr as being fairly poor at close quarters due to its reload style, but it is fine for long-range bombardment. Its fire rate is also 1.67 rounds per second by default. You may find this to be a little bit too slow if you're used to faster semi-automatic weapons, but it isn't too hard to pace out. Not stated by the arsenal is the damage of its Barrage Fire mode, which seems to be 560, spread between 168 impact, 280 puncture, and 112 slash damage, instead of being blast like its main fire mode. This damage is spread over 7 pellets per shot by default. The Zarr also comes along with a V polarity by default, which is quite nice for a weapon that doesn't have a forma in its crafting requirements. When in use, it is worth keeping in mind what your fire mode is at any given moment. Trying to shoot at a distant enemy with the Barrage mode is kind of a waste of time, but not especially harmful. The real issue would be if you shoot at a nearby target with the cannon mode selected, in which case you will probably wreck your own Warframe in the process. For the cannon mode, the grenade has a somewhat slow velocity but breaks apart into numerous additional explosives upon impact with an enemy, the terrain, or a teammate that decides to jump in front of you. That last one will probably blow you up as the primary explosion deals full self-damage. But mercifully, the additional secondary explosives won't affect you. So as long as you have a sufficient distance between yourself and the impact point of the main projectile, you don't have to worry about all of the secondary explosions. And there will be a lot of secondary explosions because the Zarr is basically a Kulstar on crack. The secondary cluster bombs are also quite interesting as their initial direction is affected by the angle the main projectile strikes whatever it came into contact with. This means you can aim it at the ground in front of you to send a spread of other bombs towards your enemy, or use it to hit a door frame to send more explosives into the room to deal with enemies you can't directly see. There are limits to these secondary explosions, however. They will automatically detonate after a certain distance, and they are only loosely affected by gravity. They can end up spiraling around pretty unpredictably. which is another reason to be thankful that the secondary explosions don't damage you anymore. For its secondary Barrage Mode, the pellets have a travel time like the Dragoon used to craft the Zarr, but this isn't a particularly important thing to keep in mind because the barrage projectiles have a hard cap on their effective range based on their flight speed. After about 1/3 or 1/4 of a second, they disappear and do no damage to enemies that they haven't already struck. This does allow its effective range to be increased with the use of Zephyr's Tailwind or the Terminal Velocity mod, which is nice, but that requires you to either use a specific Warframe or dedicate a mod slot to Terminal Velocity, both of which will fall to your personal preference. The Barrage Mode does deal a pretty nice amount of damage, but due to how multi-shot works, it won't be able to take advantage of its status chance in this mode. This is because its listed status chance is your probability for at least one pellet landing a status proc. I'm not sure of its exact math, but this means that every individual shotgun pellet has a very high chance of not actually inflicting a status effect on any given shot. Which is why shotguns are really bad status weapons unless you can get them to 100% status chance. However, the larger pellet count and high damage means that Barrage Mode will be able to take greater advantage of the Zarr's critical stats to make up for the moderate 15% base critical hit chance. So this means that the Zarr is split between two modes of operation that can do their own thing well, but not the other, on an even deeper level than may be first apparent. Its cannon mode, while of course better at long range and damaging groups due to its being an explosive mode, is also better for laying down status effects through its explosions, but can't really take great advantage of its critical stats due to being relatively slow. While the Barrage Mode is limited to closer ranges and throws the Zarr's status chance out the window, but is able to much better utilize its 2.5 times critical damage multiplier. So what way you mod the Zarr will depend on which mode you want to take advantage of, or if you want to go down the Jack of all trades, master of none approach. You can also choose to include some quality of life mods. Increasing the Zarr's reload speed would be the obvious one to let it keep its outgoing fire rate high, and give it a little bit more flexibility at closer ranges by minimizing your reload time. Terminal Velocity is also useful for both its fire modes, allowing its barrage projectiles to strike from further away and its cannon grenades to have a much flatter trajectory. I personally have opted to go down the status chance route as I feel like it's able to maintain effectiveness at high levels. Blast procs knock enemies down, which can take them out of the action for quite a while if combined with a code status proc. You can go for either 2 or 3 of the dual stat elemental mods that were originally released for events to accomplish this, with the remaining slots taken up by standard 90% elemental mods or quality of life mods to suit your own preference. Building for crits to utilize its Barrage Mode is also pretty straightforward. Just include Point Strike and Vital Sense, which leaves 2 spaces for elemental mods. 3 if you want to remove Firestorm, but given just how useful Firestorm is, I would recommend against taking it out. And for a compromise build, you can basically either do a crit build with event dual status mods, or you can give removing Vital Sense a try while keeping Point Strike equipped. This works okay, but won't do things as well as either of the 2 dedicated mod setups. In the end, I would recommend taking advantage of its status chance. As I said earlier, it lets you deal with high-level enemies much more effectively compared to building it for its crits. At least, that seems to be the case based on some time with it in the simulacrum. But in either case, the Zarr is good, and I have found it to be quite a bit of fun. I appreciate the sound design as well. The sound of the Zarr firing is a very satisfying, boomy noise, and I appreciate the sound assets used for switching fire modes. When you switch to the cannon mode, it will make 1 click, while switching to the barrage mode makes a series of 3 faster clicks, giving you some audio feedback on what you just set your cannon to do, and lets you kind of get a feel for it instead of having to look down near your ammo counter to figure out what mode it's in at any given time. Although care should be taken if you die and revive, because the Zarr will be set back to its cannon mode when that happens, which can lead to you blowing yourself up again accidentally. But the Zarr does self-damage while the Tonkor does not, and the Tonkor has a much higher critical chance which is capable of red crits with the same critical damage multiplier. So as fun as the Zarr is, realistically everyone is just going to keep using the damn Tonkor, which is kind of a shame. Thank you for watching my look at the Zarr. All comments are appreciated, and I hope to see you around next time. For more Warframe content, feel free to give a click over to one of my other videos, such as my playthrough of the recent War Within quest, my opinions on the Sancti Magistar, or maybe my older video on the Tonkor, another grenade launcher. And as always, good luck, have fun, and take care.